Hi, I'm Jason Norris, and this is On the Go FM, episode 104. I like to talk about what you can do with a podcast, exploring ways to make your message mobile. Teaching, training, telling stories, and changing lives. You can do it all with a podcast. I've created a website with an occasional podcast for churches. It's all about podcast ministry and how a church can serve both congregation and community with a podcast. That's at podcastministry.org. One concern I've seen and heard from church leaders and church members is something that needs to be discussed. If I make my message mobile, will people stop coming to my place? That's the fear expressed by many in churches, and I wonder if it's the same fear for those who teach and work in institutes of higher education as well. The worry is an old one. Back in the day, in the 1900s, many people took to the air through this newfangled thing called radio. Preachers preached to the nation on AM and later FM radio. And then television came along and the televangelist was born. Now, I've never seen research that showed a drop in church attendance specifically because of church services on broadcast media, but that was certainly a worry for churches trying to decide if they should buy airtime. Fast forward to now. It's almost 2020, and today airtime on the internet is cheap, and it's almost easy. Online churches are real places people can go to participate in worship services, watching and listening to praise songs and sermons. And people are still worried that folks won't come to church if the church creates an online church. This is an issue worth exploring. Recently, I heard a podcast on it and read a completely unrelated article about it. I also read the comments. Wow. Now, I have been advised to skip reading comments, but I find them insightful. Now I know how a lot of people feel about this issue, not just the feelings of the two podcasters and the blogger that I listened to and I read from. There are common arguments that I want to tackle in future articles and episodes. I believe there are important nuances being overlooked by church leaders and many church members, but I won't try to get into detail about those in this episode. Instead, I want to use this episode to clearly state that I believe in-person connections at church are important. I also want to clarify what I've been saying for a long time. When I say you should make your message mobile, I don't mean that you should shut your doors and sell your building, whether that's your church or your school. Go mobile with the teaching, the training, and the stories that are currently only available at specific times inside your building, on your campus, and inside your classrooms. That's what you go mobile with. When you do that, people who want to learn can do so whenever and wherever it's best for them. And I want you to think about this. If you do this, people will be thankful that you reached out to them in this way to keep them connected. If they were already part of your church, they will return in person when their schedule and commitments allow. If they are new to your church, then they will choose you when they decide to take their next steps toward faith and fellowship with others. If you're still worried, take a look at what's already happening in churches around you and probably in your own church right now. Attendance is dropping. It's not because they want to see your church service on Facebook Live. People are showing up less and less as our culture continues changing. And if you're not going to make your message mobile, they won't have any spiritual connection with your church at all. I strongly encourage you to shift your mindset. Don't think about online church or online Bible studies, videos, and podcasts as competition to gathering in your building. Instead, think of these things as lifelines. Reach them through the technology they carry with them everywhere. Make your message mobile so people can learn on the go. By the way, I have an on-the-go guide to podcast ministry. It has 10 different ways you can develop a podcast ministry in your church. The sermon podcast is on there, but this goes way beyond the sermon. You can get the podcast ministry guide at podcastministry.org. That's podcastministry.org. I'm Jason Norris, and thanks for listening to On the Go FM.